Hello, I'm Tracy Nicholas, and welcome to Folkloring. I am a passionate folklore practitioner, and to me, folkloring is more than just a podcast. It's my commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Folkloring, which is going to be all about the folklore of knives. But before I get into all of that, I wanted to tell you how I've been folkloring lately. A couple of ways. It is now spooky season, and so I love decorating for Halloween. I probably have almost as many Halloween decorations as I do Christmas decorations, and so I've been getting all of that set up and working on making sure it feels good. So that's going on. Now, the other thing that I've done just lately, yesterday there was a hailstorm. And hailstorms are very unusual here. So it's maybe once a year, twice if it's a really big year. And I went and I filmed it for a little bit because it's not an everyday occurrence. And I started thinking about what is the symbolism with hail. And obviously a lot of times it can be about destruction, breaking things down, breaking things apart. And I thought, well, there are other definitions for hail, like you could hail a cab, or you could hail a friend. And so I started thinking about hailing a friend, and I thought, my friends that when people are struggling, they don't always reach out. And I thought, the idea of hailing my friends, I'm going to reach out to some of the folks that I haven't heard from in a while just to check in on them, make sure they're okay, make sure they're not struggling with anything. And so I did that. I sent out a bunch of messages yesterday, and it was great. I've got two different friends that I've made plans with to get together and catch up. So that was really nice. For me, it was a good use of the symbolism there. Okay, so on to it. The folklore of knives. Now, obviously, knives are very important in our lives. They're very important tools. They can be used for a lot of different things. They can be weapons. They can be sports equipment, such as in the case of like throwing knives, right? Obviously, they can be utensils. We use them to eat with. And tools, carving tools, tools for, cutting different things, prep work in the kitchen, so many things we can use knives for. So obviously, they're very important to us. And they were very important to us in the survival of our species. And as we know, when things are important to us for our survival, there is a lot of folklore that grows up around those things. And the same is true for knives. Now, it could just be that I can only pick massive topics to talk about, but just let it be said that knives have a lot of superstition and folklore around them. For a little bit of quick history. So knives were one of the earliest tools ever used by humanity, and they appeared at least 2.5 million years ago. And we know this because of something called the Oldowan tools. And these were early tools that were very simple ones. They were usually made by chipping one or several flakes off a stone using another stone. And the term Oldowan is taken from the site of Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, where the first Oldowan stone tools were discovered by Louis Leakey in the 1930s. Now, knives were originally made of stone, of wood, of bone, and over the centuries, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but of course, as we went through the different ages, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, we would see knives, the technology would upgrade as we understood how to work these different metals. Now, early on, the use of knives were primarily for hunting and preparing food. But after not too long, they started to become a symbol of power, authority, and survival. going as far back as ancient civilizations, knives held a sacred place in religious rituals, ceremonies. They were used to draw protective circles, to direct energy, and that led to a belief that knives could influence spiritual realms. Now, as a little bit of a side note, when we talk about sharpening knives, it's very interesting because there's a difference between sharpening a knife and honing a knife. And mostly what you do at home is hone your knife, unless you have a grinder that you use. The difference is that honing realigns the existing edge of a knife. Over time, when you're using a knife, it gets little burrs and imperfections. And so you're sort of scraping those off and getting the edge that you had after sharpening back to, close to its original state. Now, sharpening involves creating an entirely new edge by removing some of the material of the knife, whatever that might be. Okay, a few superstitions, and I've tried to kind of group these together because, as I said, lots of superstitions, and I didn't want it to just be a big old list. So, in the bedroom, placing a knife under the bed of a woman who is giving birth is believed to cut her pain and ease her pain during labor. Now, if a husband alternately sticks a knife into the headboard of his wife when she's pregnant, that means that she will have a boy. It'll guarantee that she has a boy. Now, if you stick the knife into a cradle's headboard, that's believed to protect a baby. But if you thrust it into the door of your house, it also is supposed to provide protection, but to the whole house. Now, in Greece, there's a popular superstition that if you place a knife with a black handle under your pillow, it will prevent nightmares that night. And in China, knives under the bed, if you leave knives under your bed, that is believed to scare away evil spirits. And in India, they don't even want pregnant women to use knives because they believe that it will encourage having a baby with a cleft palate. Now, hundreds of years ago, people believed that crossing cutlery was bad luck. It could be a sign of witchcraft. Two knives crossed on a table would cause a quarrel between whoever was in the household. It is believed, though, that uncrossing or straightening them out immediately will prevent the bad luck or quarrel from actually happening. Now, in Italy, there's a superstition that if you cross your knives this way, it's an insult to Christ's cross, and that's why it's bad luck. Now, if you put a knife crossed over a spoon, that is supposed to indicate that you think the food was bad and you're wishing bad luck onto the cook. As far as gifting knives, it's believed that gifting a knife to someone may cause the relationship between the giver and the recipient to be severed. So you can avoid that, however, because what you do in that case, if you're going to give a knife to someone as a gift, you can attach a penny to the knife. And when you give the knife to the recipient, they are to take the penny and give it back to you immediately as payment. So you won't then sever the relationship. Now, worst case scenario is gifting to celebrate a wedding, as that can sever the marriage itself between the two individuals. Now, you can give a pocket knife, but only if it's closed. And that way you can avoid conflict or arguments that would occur should you give it to them with the knife open. And you don't ever want to gift a knife after death, like leave it on a gravestone or anything like that, because the blade would be considered to be stabbing the soul of the dead. Although the bad luck is not true everywhere. In Finland, a knife given as a gift is a sign of respect. And this is especially true for particular clubs and organizations. And the particular knife that they give is a fixed blade knife, and it's an outdoor knife called a puko, and it's always presented with the handle first to signify trust and that you have friendly intentions. Now, you don't ever want to stir anything using your knife, like coffee or soup or whatever, because that will bring bad luck. And there's a little rhyme that can help you remember this. Stir with a knife and stir up strife. So, easy one. Now, one variant of this superstition includes the idea that the bad luck will mean pain or getting stitches. Although other knife owners believe that you never truly own a knife unless it has, quote unquote, bitten you. Tasted your blood, basically. And so once you've cut yourself with a knife, the owner should never sell or trade their knife with anyone because it's connected to you. And there's also a belief that a knife that has bitten you will stay sharp longer and is less likely to accidentally cut its owner, which is interesting because I think that one of the reasons that people do get cut is if they have a dull blade and they have to use extra pressure or they have to saw harder, whatever it is. And also, as I was talking about earlier, when you're honing the knife and making the blade, getting rid of all of those little burrs and stuff, when you cut yourself with a dull blade, the cut is worse because of those burrs. It's rougher and it doesn't make as clean of a cut, so it doesn't heal as quickly. So I found that really interesting. Now, it's also said that sharpening a knife after sunset was bad luck. And this comes from before when we had electricity and electric lights because it was dark later. So it would be easier to cut yourself while sharpening when it's harder to see. Now, some people believe that you should never close a knife either by folding a knife back into itself or putting it back into whatever sheath it's in if someone else has opened it. Now, dropping a knife brings with it its own issues. Bad things will happen if you drop a knife and it falls and sticks into the floor with its point. But also, if you drop a knife, it means that someone is coming to visit you. Now, a knife on the floor will bring a man. But if the knife points toward the back door of your house, it means that that guest is unwelcome. But if it's pointing toward the front, obviously it's someone you're excited to see. Dropping a fork represents a woman and a spoon a child. And the more frequently that you drop any of this silverware, the quicker the visitor should be coming. And if you try and actually go and drop a knife on purpose because you're excited about somebody coming, it doesn't work. Now, in Iceland, they believed that when a knife is dropped by someone while cleaning and the knife is pointing in the direction of the sea, the fishermen will get a good haul the next time they go fishing. But if the knife falls and points back toward the land, fishermen will not catch anything the next time they go fishing. Now, there is a belief that you can tell if your future spouse will be dark or fair by spinning a white-handled knife. Now, if the knife's handle comes to rest pointing at you, or whoever is asking the question, that means your future spouse will be fair. If the handle points at anyone else, your future spouse will be darker in coloration. You don't want to slice hot cornbread with a knife because that implies that you're cutting your luck. I'm not sure if the same thing is true for corn pone, but definitely not cornbread. And there's a similar superstition that says that piercing bread that was baked by a pregnant woman with a knife may cause the baby's eyes to be poked out. I feel like we're being really hard on pregnant women and knives. Maybe it's because there was a fear of them being more emotional. I don't know. Now, according to Russian folklore, if there is a knife that has been set down with the sharp side up, that means that murderers are being born while it's left that way, which seems pretty dark. In Romania, however, your guardian angel who protects you from everything will escape if you play with knives. So most people there don't do it to ensure that their guardian angel stays put. Now, eating with a knife. In Russia, it is believed that you eat with a knife, it will cause you to become as wildly angry as a mad dog. So people generally avoid doing this. And another popular superstition in Russia is if you lick food off of a knife, you will become a cruel person. And this, who knows, this superstition might have come to fruition because how it looks when you're actually licking something off a knife. And, let's be serious. There is the very real possibility that this could mean that you are the villain in a Wild Wild West movie. So let's be careful with that. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, there are a lot of uses for knives, and some of them are ritualistic or ceremonial. So I'm going to talk about a few of those from different cultures, but then take a deep dive into a couple of ceremonial type knives. Now, in India, there is a push dagger that's called a katar that is sometimes used ceremonially. There's also a dagger called a kalaya that can be used in Tibetan Buddhist rituals. There is something called a kirpan, which is a ceremonial knife that all baptized Sikhs must wear as one of the 5 visible symbols of the Sikh faith. And they have to always have that on their person. Now, a kris is a dagger used in Indo-Malay cultures, often by nobility and sometimes in religious rituals. And there is a small knife that is traditionally worn with Highland and Isle dress, and think kilt, in Scotland, that is part of that traditional dress. There is a traditional knife that the Yakuts use, and they use it for carving meat or fish cutting, but it can also be used as part of a traditional ethnic costume. Now, in Judaism, there are several knives that are used for ritual purposes. There's one that is used specifically for cutting challah at festival meals. There's one for ritual slaughtering of animals that are considered pure and edible according to Jewish dietary laws. And then, of course, there's one for the circumcision of male newborn children. Now, in the Himalayan region, there's a knife called the kukri, and it is a traditional knife of the Gurkha soldiers. The origins of this knife date back centuries, and its design kind of evolved over time to suit various purposes. And the belief here is that these particular knives were not weapons, or not merely weapons. They were revered objects in the culture of the Nepalese and the Gurkha soldiers. Now, some of the beliefs that go along with this knife is that it was a symbol of good fortune, and so it was used in various rituals and ceremonies symbolizing prosperity and blessings. And it's not uncommon for one of these knives to be present during important life events and to symbolize the wish for a bright and fortunate future. It's believed to be a protector when people are journeying. And many people believe that if you carry a kukri, it offers protection during travel. And it's seen as a guardian that guides its bearers safely throughout their journey. So obviously these protective powers have made it a cherished companion for adventurers. It's also seen as a symbol of courage, and it represents unyielding bravery and the valor of the Gurkha soldiers. And carrying the knife is more than just a tradition. It's really a representation of that spirit and courage that defined these soldiers. And the sight of it in the hands of a Gurkha soldier is often enough to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. And when these soldiers go into battle, they carry their kukri knives with them, believing that it will help lead them to victory. So, moving to Scotland, there is a knife called a dirk that is a traditional Scottish weapon, and it's a symbol that also embodies the spirit of Scotland's history, culture, and again, that warrior ethos. And it too is seen as more than just a blade. It's a reflection of the nation's resilience and identity. Now, the dirk is a single-edged blade. And again, the designs vary in size and intricacy. But the hilt often features a distinctive crossguard and is adorned with lots of ornate engravings. And these designs are not just for the weapon's aesthetic appeal, but it's also a lot of symbolism that are carved into that hilt that has a lot of, it's paying homage to Scotland's heritage. And the dirk dates back to the Highland clans of Scotland, and that they were an integral part of traditional Highland dress. Now, initially it was used as a tool for everyday tasks, such as, cutting, chopping, self-defense, and the adaptability of it, though, because it has so many uses, is really, again, becomes symbolic of sort of that rugged lifestyle of those traditional, clans. Now, there was obviously a warrior symbolism having to do with the dirk. Scotland's history saw plenty of conflicts and battles, and so the dirk transitioned easily from a tool to a weapon. It became, again, a steadfast companion on the battlefield and embodied courage, honor, and a fierce determination to protect one's homeland. Beyond combat application, the dirk now plays a crucial role in Scottish ceremonies and events. It's a key component of traditional Highland dress, and it's often worn in the kilt hose, which is, the sock. In formal occasions, such as weddings, the dirk is displayed as an emblem of heritage and pride. Now, in ceremonial contexts, the dirk takes on some pretty profound symbolism. In weddings, for instance, the dirk is seen as playing a central part, evoking ancient customs that hark back to Scotland's warrior past. And so it's prominent in different ceremonies. In addition to that, the dirk often extends beyond the individual to help tie in to like a clan identity. And so some of the symbols that would be carved into the hilt would tie an individual to their clan and that shared history that binds them together. Now, if we look a little bit more in modern pagan practice, the athame and the boline. Now, there is a difference between these two knives. The athame is used for directing energy, and the boline is considered a more practical tool for carrying out physical tasks, though it can be used in ritual. Now, the athame is a double-edged knife, and like I said, it's used for directing energy, and it can be used to cut unwanted energetic ties. It can be used to draw symbols in the air during ritual. It can be used to, draw the sacred circle before a ritual and for, opening up that sacred circle after the ritual. Now, it's not necessarily a very sharp knife, both for safety reasons, because you're handling it during the ritual, and because obviously it doesn't necessarily actually cut anything on the physical plane. It is seen as having masculine qualities, assertive qualities, and it's associated with both fire and air depending on the tradition. Because the athame directs energies through its movements into the air, this is why a lot of people associate it with air. Now, those who link it with fire point to the fact that obviously knives are literally forged in fire and that they can be the agents of transformation. Bolines, on the other hand, they typically feature a curved or crescent-shaped blade, and they're attached to a handle made from wood, bone, or metal. And the blade is typically double-edged, and it is very sharp for more precise cutting. Now, they symbolize the practitioner's connection to the natural world, the element of earth, and the practical aspects of witchcraft. They're associated with the harvest, with abundance, and the cycle of life and death. Now, ritualistically, they can play a significant role when they're used to gather herbs, prepare ritual ingredients, and perform different various ceremonial tasks with more precision and reverence. So a lot of people consider these essential tools for their ritualistic practices. So, lots of ways to use knives, but how can you bring the folklore into your day-to-day knife usage? I've got a few ideas. First, you can obviously use a knife in ritual if you like to perform rituals, or to prepare for one, cutting up herbs and so forth, as we talked about earlier. Now, if you're going to do that, you might also want to consider consecrating your knife. And there's a variety of ways in which you can do that. You can expose the knife to sunlight every day for a full moon cycle. You can cleanse the knife with salt water, and you might even consider using moon water to do that with. You can keep the knife surrounded by crystals, and make sure if you do that some of those crystals are black, because black crystals are the best at absorbing negative energy. You can always use smoke cleansing and, allow the smoke of whatever herb bundle that you want to flow over the whole knife. You can bury the blade of the knife in earth, so you can just literally stick it into the dirt. And you can do that outside or in a, potted plant if you want. Now, you also might think about the symbolism of knives while you're using them. And that's always an easy way to be folkloring in your day-to-day life, because everything can have a symbolic meaning when you think about it. You can sharpen your knives, or you can hone them, but please do not put them in the dishwasher, because that will absolutely dull their blades. Now, obviously, you can use them as decor. I personally have several knives up on what I call my weapon wall, but obviously don't cross them, because we know that's bad luck. And I sort of think of it as in like Ghostbusters, where you don't want to let the streams cross. But maybe that's just me. Now, I know earlier I said that it's bad luck to give a knife as a gift, but there are a couple of circumstances where it is appropriate and not bad luck at all. Now, if the recipient uses knives for work or for a hobby or even survival needs, a high quality knife can be a great gift for that person because it will be useful to them. Now, if you have a very close family bond or friendship with someone, then that knife can have a symbolic meaning of working together or, doing activities together. If a knife has a cultural or religious significance as a traditional gift to someone, or, in your heritage or their heritage, then that's perfectly fine. Or if you want to give a knife as a ceremonial display piece and it wouldn't ever be used for cutting, then that doesn't have the symbolism of cutting the friendship. So in all of those ways, you could gift a knife. Now, you might want to use a knife for carving as a hobby. You also might want to have the tip of that knife and carve into a candle that you're going to use, either a name or runic symbols. So if you're going to use a candle for some of your spell work or ritual, then you can use your knife, your ritual knife, to do that. Now, interestingly, and this did not make it into the episode, but as I was doing my research, I discovered that there are just an insane number of different ways to cut food, different styles of cutting. I found one website that had 35 various cuts between like cutting up vegetables, you can julienne, you can slice, and like cutting up meats and particular ways in which to cut meat and fish. And it's just amazing. So if you were so inclined, you could certainly go educate yourself, find out about all the different various cuts of food that you can do, and experiment with those. I guess all I can say is the only thing you shouldn't do with a knife, besides gifting it to the wrong person, is to get all stabby with it, because nobody likes that. Anyway, thank you very much for listening thus far. I hope that you enjoyed it and got some great information and ideas about knives, their use, their symbolism, and hopefully you can go out and start folkloring with your knives. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you next time.
As always, thanks for listening to Folkloring. If you liked what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram. Other places you can find me are at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent, or creating folklore-inspired games at madmenandheroes.com. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep the traditions alive. And I hope that wherever you are, folklore is making your life more magical.